So this is going to be a fairly quick video and just some initial comments about using an Aillio Bullet roaster as a sample roaster, and what kind of settings you might want to use to start out to do that, because what we found is that if you use the settings you would use for 500 grams or a pound, 2 pounds, you're going to be forcing way too much heat at this small amount of coffee. But what's really cool is that with the new sensor in the roaster, the IR sensor, these small batches have gotten a lot easier to do, and it's a really great viable sample roaster. In terms of the downsides of the Bullet, I have kind of yet to think of many that are substantial at all, especially the fact that you can develop a profile for the roast, hit playback, as I've done right now. I'm just in a playback mode, and just roast batch after batch. So what I'm doing initially here is I'm charging the drum to a fairly low temperature and trying to shoot for a very nice, even yellowing. Although, perfectly even yellowing is not required or necessary. And in fact, what we have here is a natural coffee, because what I'm trying to do is I'm actually comparing this to another current popular roaster that you may recognize, although this is a slightly different software version. And what I've seen is a huge amount of interest in this from coffee producers, because it's so easy, and it is incredibly easy, operated off of your phone. However, with a 50-gram limit on the batch size, it's quite tight, and that should be enough for cupping. But with naturals, and specifically, I've struggled with this little guy to get good, even results. And I think that could even lead to rejections on some coffees where things appear to be Quakers, but they're just, in fact, kind of a limitation of the roaster. And I've seen the Bullet handle those coffees much better, so that's why I'm specifically throwing a kind of difficult coffee at it. This was a coffee that we actually had them reprocess because it had Quakers. I'm not going to really go into too many specifics, but I think I try to explain this, but my idea of developing a roast profile is to find the settings that just make sense to me based on experience, that won't scorch or rush into a roast too quickly. We'll see nice, even warm-up initially, because of course you can get a very even appearing roast in the final product and have gotten there through results that you've now masked with the roast color that actually are incredibly uneven, and you'll taste that in the cup. So what I'm trying to do is find a baseline that involves the least modifications to the roast along the way, the least profiling. Which is essentially, what we do when we're roasting on this machine. Is there's literally no adjustment that we make. What we're doing is we're adjusting as the machine warms up, etc. And for each barrel, we're kind of making an adjustment. But you don't sample roast doing profiles all the time, although now you can. And the advantage of that is that you can start with a lower warm-up temperature on the Bullet, increase the heat a little, decrease the fan a little, throw a little heat at it at the end, and without having to do anything, hit playback and reproduce that over and over and over again. And, for me, it's just about getting a really good sample roast I can judge. I'm not doing this for production roasting, for matching a production roast, and for getting the best roast out of a coffee. Sample roasting isn't exactly about that. So it's about roasting each coffee the same and comparing the qualities of the green coffee, not of the roast. Anyway, I'm using a 225 degree initial charge temperature, so quite low. And then you can see what I've done here without actually touching it, because I'm running it off my profile playback, is I've started off with P4, going up to P5, that's the heat temperature, and then back to P4. I mean, this looks really complicated, it's really not. I hit one button and started this roast. I started with a high temperature of F7, cut it down to F3 in order not to draw out the roast too long, in order to push some heat at it. So lower fan speed, that's the F number, means that you're pushing less air out of the roaster, meaning your temperature's a little higher. And drum speed, I've just gone from a very high drum speed down to a lower drum speed. Not super significant there. Anyway, if you don't know, this is your bean temperature in the purple, this is your drum temperature in the blue, and this is a calculated rate of rise, which, because it's calculated on the fly, goes up and down, up and down. So, and actually, I will admit, I don't fully understand why it does that, but at any given point, it will give you a rate of rise calculation right up here. And I hear our first crack going on, so yep. It's pretty much on target, although I can see that the rate of rise is a very different coffee that I used initially here. So in the background, you can see the curve that you're playing back to, and it was quite different because it was a very moist, fresh coffee. And this is natural coffee, so quite a different coffee. So I can see the coffee's reacting differently in this roast. And of course, you can have as many sample roast profiles as you want. And you can have one for naturals, you can have one for washed coffee, you can have one for really fresh, high moisture coffee, you can have one for well-rested coffee where you need to be more gentle, and all those make a lot of sense in terms of roasting in general and sample roasting. Getting nice and yellow here at 3 minutes and 40 seconds. So I will hit yellowing on my 150 gram sample roast curve that I'm working on. So the way I basically approach a curve is to try to figure out how I can hit my sort of target time, what I think sounds reasonable, using as few changes to the roast as possible. What I want to do is just kind of be absolutely minimal and not create some crazy curve. And so what I've done here is I've started out at P4, F7, D7. So heat 4, fan 7, drum 7. And the idea there is low heat, and with a 225 Celsius charge drum temperature. So that's on the low side. What I'm trying to do is with this small amount of coffee, they're not go too aggressive on it. And I like what I'm seeing quite a bit there with the browning, yellow to brown. So we're only at 4 minutes 50 seconds. But what's been happening on these roasts is that it's been lagging right around now. So I'm being a little more aggressive here, and I've switched up to P5 for the heat at 3 minutes. And the other option here is to bring down the fan speed if I'm not getting first crack quick enough. So we're at 139 right now, almost getting towards 140, and I should be seeing first crack starting about 148 to 152 Celsius. It's a pretty reasonable temperature. Yeah, and I have my other roasts here have been kind of lagging, especially at the end. So you got to sometimes throw some heat at coffee to get it into first crack, and then maybe back off once it's reached that threshold. That's sort of what I'm working with right now. What I've done here is I've taken my fan speed down to 3, and my heat's up at 5 in order to push it into first crack, and we should be getting that for sure very soon. It's a pretty fresh, moist Ethiopian coffee. Yeah, I can hear a little first crack starting there. We'll click our first crack button. Those little tags aren't, really necessary, but... So again, I've been doing very minimal adjustments here, trying to find where I can hit what I want from my target temperature. I don't want these long baked roasts. I think another thing that's really important to bring up with, this is with roasting in general, in terms of the time it takes in development. You do not want to match with a small roaster, sample roaster, precisely the time and roast curve of a larger roaster. When you're roasting 150 grams and your coffee is part of your roast charge, it is part of the roast system. It is a thermal element. I'm going to be backing off my heat just a second there, just to not be aggressive on the finish of this roast. So, no, our Probat roasts that are, 12 to 14, we don't want to match that here. And if we did, we would get a baked flavor, which is what I've successfully done over here. Okay, I'm going to be finishing this up, so let me pause a minute. And usually with the Quest, I'm still hearing some first crack. I'm sorry, with the Bullet. Usually still hearing a little bit of first crack in there when I finish. That does not make me uncomfortable at all. And with the Bullet, you'll see a relatively light exterior roast color. When you taste it, you'll likely find it's darker than you thought. So if you roast to the same color as a larger roaster or a different machine, you may be surprised that the coffee tastes darker. And that's because I think the Quest has a really nice, Bullet has a really nice ratio of the interior color, which you would see when you grind the coffee and you compare that to the exterior color, which means it has a very thorough, induction heating has a really nice, thorough, from the inside to the outside of the bean, roast characteristic. So, okay, that's a sample roast. I was shooting for about 9 minutes. I did pretty good on that. And here's my notes. Started out P4 F7 D7, adjusted at 3 minutes to P5 F7 D7. If you know what those mean, P is heat, F is fan, D is drum. And did a couple tweaks there. I brought it down to P4 again when I was well into first crack, just to finish it off. And I will save that curve because I like it as a good starting point. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and dump this roast. If you haven't heard the silly Bullet voice yet, roasting has finished. So as I said, this is a kind of a challenging coffee, and I think this is a target roast from this machine here. And this is what I'm matching, and you can see the Quakers. They're a problem in this specific lot, which is why we essentially rejected it. And here I do not have to save my roast, but I could just save and roast again right now. I do not have to save it because it's already saved. And I have not tried less than 150 grams yet. Most suppliers of coffee could easily give you 150 grams for samples. That is about getting towards 5 ounces, maybe 4.8 ounces of coffee. So in a pound you've got at least 3 of those roasts. and I don't see why it shouldn't be able to do 100 grams now with the infrared IBTS sensor. And the whole point of that, and this is an issue with every single roaster, professional, whatever, so if you have a physical thermoprobe probing into the drum, when you roast a small batch, the coffee is not contacting that drum. So your roast drum temperature, your input or output airflow temperatures, your ambient temperature, all that can be fine. But your actual drum temperature that's dependent on a physical contact with your probe is going to be off. And that's what's so cool about this, is that it should be in line no matter if you're roasting 500 grams or 150 grams. So I don't see why 100 grams would be a problem. I wouldn't probably roast 50 grams like this little guy. That's a very, very small roast. And what I have here is a 6-minute roast. And this is, of course, what we just did, which was 9 minutes, 43 seconds. Okay, so here is the two roast results from the air sample roaster, 6 minutes, from the Bullet 943. And you know, it's really hard to get this on camera. So in person, you know, I see Quakers in both. That's the issue with this roast. This definitely looks darker. And yet, these are the samples. And in person here, they look pretty much dead on. So that's something about the Bullet that's noteworthy, is that slightly lighter roast appearance can translate into a slightly darker actual roast. I'll check this in the cup and see if it comes through as well. But compared to air roasters, compared to other roasters, you'll see a lighter surface appearance in the whole bean, and then a slightly darker appearance in the ground coffee than you might expect.